The kitchen always looks its best when no one is actually living in it. That's the trick I learned after years of staging houses for clients. The more fake the room, the more people swoon over it. Fresh tulips, untouched marble counters, a bowl of lemons that no one ever plans to eat. Perfection is just silence with a scented candle burning. So there I was, staring at my own picture-perfect kitchen on the screen of my phone, scrolling through the photos I'd taken for work, thinking it looked like a life I no longer lived in. Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Funny how you can design every inch of a room, pick every tile, every grout line, every cabinet pull, and still miss the part where your marriage is dissolving between the pantry and the fridge. Logan wasn't home. Again. I tried not to check the time because every time I did that quiet mental math. 2 hours late equals one more excuse. He would walk in eventually, smelling like that cedar cologne he thinks makes him seem important, toss a half-smile my way, and talk about a rough market week. Mortgage brokers love pretending their job is a contact sport. I had just finished a client mood board, soft beiges, woven rugs, one aggressively expensive armchair, when the front door opened. Logan stepped in, eyes already half somewhere else. "Hey," he said, voice flat, like we lived in separate apartments and accidentally bumped into each other near the elevators. "Hi," I said, closing my laptop. "You're late." "Yeah, I told you I was going to be." No, he didn't, but I'd stopped correcting him months ago. I just nodded, the universal gesture of marriage fatigue. He loosened his tie and walked past me, straight to the fridge. No kiss, no small talk, just a hunt for food, like he was the world's most boring raccoon. He pulled out the last slice of lasagna, the one I had specifically saved for myself, and took a bite straight from the container, cold fork, no plate. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. Not the lasagna, not the missing sorry, but the way he didn't even pretend to care anymore, not even enough to fake it. Logan had always been a decent performer, and I used to admire his ability to sell mortgages and smiles in the same hour. Now he was just muted, like someone had turned the saturation down on him. He ate in silence, leaning on the counter I had spent weeks picking out. Quartz with faint gold veins. Beautiful, durable, and apparently invisible to him. "I think we should take a break," he said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, like discussing the weather. I blinked, even though my face stayed neutral. Inside, it felt like someone just unplugged the power to the entire room. "A break from what?" I asked, even though I knew exactly what he meant. That sentence always means the same thing. There's someone else. "Just space," he said, shrugging. "Time apart. We've been off lately." Off, as in he's been sneaking around while I've been trying to match throw pillows to the seasons. I waited for something else. An apology, a reasonable explanation, even a lie with decent storytelling. But he was already rinsing the fork, conversation over in his mind. "When?" I asked. "Soon. I'm going to stay at a friend's place for a while." "Which friend?" He paused. That half-second delay that cheaters probably think is too fast to notice. I noticed. I notice everything. "Just a guy from the gym." "Name?" "You don't know him." That was answer enough. He walked away, and I watched the back of his suit jacket disappear down the hall, like it was leaving behind the last chapter of a book I didn't want to read again. The first night he left, the apartment felt like a place waiting for someone, but I didn't know if that someone was him or the person I used to be. I reorganized the spice drawer. I cleaned the grout with a toothbrush. I even polished the stainless steel mixer that I hadn't used since last Thanksgiving. When you don't know what to do with emotional wreckage, you make the house look ready for an open house. He texted me the next afternoon, swinging by later to grab some shirts. Not, "How are you?" Not, "Let's talk." Just shirts. When he came in, he didn't even make eye contact, just moved through the bedroom like a tourist in a hotel suite. Grabbed shirts, socks, shoes. I stood at the doorframe watching him, feeling like I was auditioning for the role of silent, estranged wife in the background. "Who is she?" I finally asked. He paused, then forced a frown. "Don't do that." "So there is a that." He zipped his duffel. "I just need room to think." "Does she help you think?" That got me a glare. Not guilt, annoyance. Like I'd interrupted a meeting he was pretending I didn't know existed. He left without answering. I didn't stop him. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. Instead, I made tea and wrote down every detail I had just witnessed, like I was taking inventory of a crime scene I wasn't allowed to report. 2 days later, I needed my design tablet. It was in his car. He had taken it while helping me on a job weeks ago. So I texted him, neutral tone, polite as a Pinterest quote, "Need the tablet." "When can I grab it?" His reply, "Just swing by the apartment I'm staying at. I'll leave the key under the mat." Apartment, singular, not friend's guest room, not couch. An apartment. I drove over late morning, no makeup, hair in a messy bun, because nothing says "I'm totally fine" like looking like you've been living off cereal and Spite. I walked up the stairs of the small red brick building and lifted the mat. No key. The door was cracked open instead. I knocked once, and when no one answered, I pushed lightly. And there she was. A woman, maybe late 20s, strawberry blonde hair twisted in a messy bun that somehow looked cute, not tragic, wearing my robe. The robe I bought on a splurge day in Soho. Soft cream cotton, monogrammed JH on the sleeve. She was sipping coffee from my favorite mug, the hand-painted one from Italy that I don't even let guests use. She looked up with casual annoyance. "Oh, you must be Jenna." Not guilty, not startled, not embarrassed, just mildly inconvenienced, as if I was a delivery driver interrupting her brunch. I didn't move. I didn't yell. I didn't throw her coffee into her lap, like the dramatic demon in my head wanted to. I said, perfectly calm, "You're wearing my robe." She glanced down, smirked. "Logan said it was fine." Of course he did. I didn't bother asking who she was. Her existence explained itself. I pulled out my phone and snapped 3 photos. Her in my robe, holding my mug, in an apartment I was paying rent for, based on the receipts I knew were still tied to our bank account. She turned away, sudden nerves in her shoulders, but not fast enough. "I just need my tablet," I said, voice steady like I was guiding a client through fabric swatches. "It's on the couch," she muttered, suddenly interested in her nails. I took it, walked toward the door, paused. "You might want to return the robe," I said. "Monogrammed items rarely stay with the mistress." She flushed. That, at least, pleased me. I left without slamming the door. People think rage is loud, but the quiet kind is sharper. The quiet kind takes notes. The quiet kind prepares. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and looked at the photos again. My robe, my mug, my life, repurposed for someone else's comfort. That was the moment the panic burned off and something steadier took its place. Revenge is just interior design in emotional form. Remove what doesn't belong, rearrange what stays, then make it look effortless. That night, I printed the lease. My name, only my name. I booked a locksmith for 11 a.m. the next morning. Then I went to bed early, not because I was tired, but because I wanted to be fully alert for the next phase. A calm mind makes cleaner plans. I woke up before sunrise, made cinnamon coffee, and packed Logan's clothes into black garbage bags, not folded, not cared for, just scooped in like unclaimed laundry. I dragged them to the lobby, stacked them by the elevator, and stuck a neon pink note on top, "Free to a bad home." Then I looked around at the building I had painted, furnished, paid for, and decided I wasn't the one who needed to move out. Logan had chosen someone else. Now I would choose everything else. At 11:03 a.m., the locksmith arrived. He was efficient, friendly, completely unaware he was facilitating the first move in my personal war. By 11:30, the locks were changed. By noon, the lease copies were printed and placed neatly in an envelope on the kitchen counter. By 12:15, I sent Logan a text. "You no longer live here, lease attached." Then I sat back on the couch, drank my coffee from my Italian mug, and waited for the sound of him realizing the rules had changed. Not "we're taking a break." Not space to think. A break implies permission. This was eviction. And for the first time in weeks, the apartment truly felt like mine again. I always thought heartbreak would feel cinematic, dramatic lighting, tissues, maybe even a symbolic sad walk in the rain. Turns out, it feels a lot more like standing in your own kitchen on a Tuesday morning, eating cereal out of the box, while planning strategic revenge like you're rewriting the laws of suburban physics. By the time Logan tried to get back into the apartment that afternoon, I was already in the living room, calmly organizing fabric swatches for a client's nursery design. It was almost soothing. Peach tones, soft textures, a life that wasn't mine. Then came the pounding. First polite knocking, then impatient knocking. Then the kind of pounding you see in movies right before someone breaks down a door. Except this wasn't a thriller. This was real life. And he was the one locked out of the life he dismantled. "Jenna, open the door. This isn't funny." He always said that when I did something he couldn't control. This isn't funny. Translation: I don't like that you stopped accepting my nonsense without permission. "Jenna, I'm not playing games. Open the door right now." I didn't move. I let him yell. I even let him ring the bell 18 times. 18. I counted each one like a meditation exercise. Then I called through the door, calm as yoga music. "The lease is on the counter. Page 2, Section 4. Tenant is listed as single occupant. Hope the friend from the gym has room for 2 now." Silence. Then cursed out muttering. Nothing on the band list kind, but close enough in tone. He stomped away, heels echoing like a toddler denied a toy. I texted him a PDF copy of the lease, nice and professional. Attached the locksmith invoice like a final flourish. That was the moment I realized anger is a terrible fuel, but spite is clean energy. Later that evening, I went downstairs to retrieve a package and saw something that almost made me applaud the universe. 3 neighbors had stopped near the pile of Logan's bagged clothes in the lobby. They were whispering, inspecting, gossip sparking like electricity. I didn't interrupt. Let the wildfire spread. Suburbia runs on fresh scandal the way children run on sugar. When I came back up, I found another text from Logan. "This is illegal. I'm getting a lawyer." I answered, "Great. Lease attached again in case you lost it the first time." He didn't reply. I sat on the couch, wrapped myself in the throw blanket I'd bought for cozy couple movie nights, and laughed. Quietly, because even victory feels fragile when it's new. I let myself feel the satisfaction, just a little. Then I got to work, because locking him out was just phase 1. I wasn't just going to break even. I was going to rebuild and let him watch from the outside. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a call from Heather, my neighbor, part-time Pilates enthusiast, full-time gossip courier. "Oh my gosh, Jenna, I just heard what happened," she said, with the tone of someone who didn't just hear. She marinated in details like a steak in sauce. "Which part did you hear?" I asked. I like to hear rumors straight from the source. "That Logan is staying with someone, and you changed the locks. And there were trash bags in the lobby with his clothes." She lowered her voice. "Is it true?" "Every part," I said, sipping coffee. "And the woman, yes, he has one." I kept it simple. People fill in more blanks when you stop talking. Heather gasped softly, and I could practically hear her adjusting the storyline in her mind. In this neighborhood, a cheating husband wasn't just scandal, it was social currency. People were going to be trading my story like limited edition coupons. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Fantastic," I said. "Best I've slept in months." That was only half a joke. She invited me to the next HOA social gathering. Something about wine tasting and charcuterie, but I knew exactly why. Not because she cared, because she wanted the first-hand version, and I was fine giving it. When someone sets fire to your life, the least you can do is narrate the flames with good lighting. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and started gathering things that would matter later. Receipts, shared bank transactions, email confirmations. Nothing illegal, nothing dramatic. Just a tidy little folder labeled Logan Reality Check. He once told me I over-organize things. Turns out it's a fantastic skill when you're preparing the softest demolition imaginable. I didn't need secret recordings, hacking, or spy tactics. Logan had always been careless, lazy even. If betrayal were a job, he'd have been fired during orientation. Around lunch, I got a text from a blocked number. "You think you won? This isn't over." I recognized the rhythm of his typing. He always spaced his punctuation weird. I replied, "Correct. It's not over. I'm just on the better team now." No answer. 5 minutes later, I got another text, this time from an unknown number, but the tone was different. "Hi, this is Tessa. Could we talk?" Tessa, my robe thief, coffee mug bandit, the woman who somehow thought stealing a wife's loungewear was a normal part of adultery. I deleted the message. Not because I didn't want to reply. Oh, I wanted to reply something along the lines of "return the robe, get a life," but silence is more unsettling than sarcasm. Let her stew. That night, I cooked dinner for one. It wasn't sad, it was extraordinary. No one commented on how much olive oil I used. No one tried to turn dinner into a passive-aggressive debate about my tone. I ate on the couch, surrounded by fabric samples and house plans, and for the first time, I looked around the place and realized I could breathe again. The lease wasn't just paperwork, it was a border, a mental line drawn in thick black ink. I am no longer sharing space with someone who treats me like background furniture. After dinner, I opened my calendar and made a new entry. Phase 2. Social fallout. Tomorrow, I would start telling the truth, calmly, politely, and with the kind of precision that makes gossip turn into legend. Not lies, not drama, just the truth, and suburbia would do the rest. I woke up early, energized in a way that felt suspiciously like hope. I showered, curled my hair, and wore the good blouse, the one Logan once said made me look too formal for casual errands. Exactly the energy I wanted. My first stop, the Haven Cafe, the unofficial therapy center of our neighborhood. If the Starbucks line is too long, this is where everyone goes to whisper loudly over almond milk lattes. When I walked in, every head turned just a little too slowly. They already knew something, but not enough, and curiosity is hunger in human form. I ordered a cappuccino, sat at a table where I was clearly visible, and opened my laptop like a woman who has nothing to hide and several things to enjoy. Cue arrival, Grant, HOA president, smug man in golf polos who always speaks like he's announcing the weather. He sat at the table beside mine and gave that polite smile people use when deciding whether now is the right time to pry into your life. "How have you been, Jenna?" he asked. "Oh, great," I said. "Logan and I are no longer together. He's living with another woman now. I changed the locks. It's cleaner this way." He blinked like I'd delivered the plot twist too early. "Oh," he said. I hadn't heard that part." I smiled slightly. "You will." Then I went back to my laptop as if discussing marital collapse was no more emotional than talking about patio furniture. 2 minutes later, someone texted someone else, then another. By the time I finished my cappuccino, the story was airborne. Later that afternoon, I got a call from Logan's sister, Caitlin. She always had the finely tuned moral superiority of someone who is wrong often, but never silent. "I heard what you did," she snapped. "I'm sure you did," I said. "Your family has strong communication skills, just not with spouses." She ignored the dig. "You're being dramatic. He needed space." "So I gave him space, outside the apartment." "You locked him out of his own home." "It's not his home. Paperwork proves that." "You're punishing him." "No," I said, voice sugar-dipped. "I'm just letting his choices land in the correct location." A pause. Then the inevitable line. "You know, this is exactly why he felt trapped." There it was, the cheater's favorite reversal. "It's your fault he betrayed you." I almost applauded. "Caitlin," I said, "he wasn't trapped, he was comfortable. Two separate things." She huffed something, then hung up. Excellent. The sister was rattled. That meant Logan was rattled. If panic were a perfume, it was definitely spreading through his side of the social tree. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the roofs of identical houses, I opened my email, attached the photos of Tessa in my robe, and drafted a new message. To HR Banking Trust Corp subject, Policy Breach Concern. Message: "Hello, I'm forwarding photos taken inside a residence currently linked to one of your mortgage clients, showing your employee, Tessa H., full name included, engaging in behavior that appears to conflict with your professional relationship guidelines. Your internal policy PDF, page 6, paragraph 2, states, employees are prohibited from personal involvement with active clients. I thought this might require attention. Regards, a concerned third party. No signature, no threats, no dramatic accusations, just policy, receipts, and a gentle push." I hit send, sat back, felt the peace of an action that didn't require yelling or chaos. Just logic. The next morning, I got a text from Logan. "You reported Tessa?" I didn't deny it, didn't confirm either. I replied, "Actions have consequences. Not my job to babysit adults." 15 minutes later, he called. I let it ring. I wasn't avoiding him. I just liked the idea of him talking to a voicemail box instead of me. Later that day, a woman in business attire knocked on my door. Medium height, dark bob, clipboard in hand. She introduced herself as Karen from Bank HR. "Can I ask you a few questions?" she said gently. I invited her in, offered tea. No dramatics, just facts. I told her the same truth I'd told myself. I didn't ruin anything. I just turned on the light, and the mess became visible. She nodded, writing calmly. "We appreciate you coming forward. I can't discuss internal outcomes, but the photos are helpful." "Happy to help," I said. And I was. Not out of malice, out of principle. If you walk into someone else's house wearing their robe and drinking from their mug, you should expect someone to someday knock on your professional stability and ask if you're familiar with consequences. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of white wine, listening to the quiet hum of sprinklers and crickets. The sky was pink like an apology. It hit me, slowly. I wasn't just getting even, I was getting free. There's a strange kind of relief in realizing the worst already happened. You've already been betrayed, lied to, underestimated. Once that floor collapses, you stop fearing the cracks and start building new rooms. And I was just getting started. Phase 2 was in motion. Phase 3 would be structural. And Logan was beginning to understand he wasn't in a break. He was in a story. And I was the narrator now. I went to bed early again, not to hide from anything, but to rest for the next brilliant move. The kind only a woman who has finally stopped apologizing is capable of. Suburban neighborhoods have their own weather system, and it isn't about clouds or rain. It's gossip. It moves fast, travels in gusts, and always finds the most inconvenient places to land. By the end of the week, Not only did everyone know Logan had been locked out, but they had collectively revised the story at least 6 different ways. In one version, I'd thrown his clothes out the window. In another, Tessa had shown up on the front lawn in tears. In yet another, Logan was apparently fighting for his marriage. That one made me laugh so hard I spilled coffee on the couch. Reality, as usual, was quieter and more pointed. He was couch surfing, trying to run damage control, and failing spectacularly at both. I didn't have to do anything except exist in public. Every store I walked into, every cafe I ordered from, at least one woman looked at me with that special blend of sympathy and curiosity, like I was both tragic and fascinating, a character in a drama they couldn't stop streaming. I didn't mind, let them watch. People pay more attention when you stop begging for it. The HOA wine event was the next big spectator sport. Heather had made sure to text me twice, just to remind me. I knew exactly what that meant. Please bring your downfall to the community table so we can politely devour it with brie. I decided to go, not because I needed to show face, but because there are scenes in life where your entrance is part of the punchline. I wore a black jumpsuit, simple, classy, the kind of thing that says, "I'm not here to cry into a cheese tray." I curled my hair, put on lipstick that looked like confidence, and walked in with the energy of a woman who had already survived the worst part. The HOA house was warm, full of string lights, and buzzing with conversations that fell suspiciously silent whenever I passed by. I smiled. That was the thing about scandal. You could drown in it, or you could wear it like perfume and see who choked first. Grant approached first, of course. He was the self-appointed king of polite confrontation. "Jenna, so glad you came," he said, tone full of enthusiasm he didn't feel. "How have you been holding up?" "I'm redecorating emotionally and physically," I said, sipping wine. "Turns out, when you stop cleaning up after a grown man, you gain about 14 hours a week and your inner peace back." Grant laughed the nervous laugh of someone terrified he might be next on the chopping block of karma. Heather swooped in, eyes shining like she'd been waiting to host a talk show. "You look amazing," she said, clasping my arm. "Like, glowing." "I'm moisturized and unburdened," I said. "That's glow." She nodded dramatically, like I'd just revealed a mystical skincare secret. Across the room, 2 of Logan's former golf buddies were whispering. I knew they recognized me. I also knew that if I walked over, they'd start talking louder, not quieter. People love pretending they're neutral until the room rearranges and they suddenly have to pick a side. Spoiler, they always pick the shinier one. And right now I was shinier than Logan. I stayed for just under an hour, long enough to be seen, not long enough to be available as a topic refresh mid-party. Before I left, I heard someone say, "I just can't believe he'd cheat on her. She was always so decent." That word made me smile. Decent was not the compliment they thought it was. Decent was what people called furniture. I didn't want to be furniture anymore. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from my realtor friend, Mia. "So, you didn't hear this from me, but Logan tried to get pre-approval for his own place using your joint financials. Didn't go through. Lender flagged all the recent instability." I sat there for a second, enjoying the quiet click of poetic symmetry. "Thanks for the update," I replied. "I'll send you a muffin basket when the sequel drops." I added that line for myself. It felt good. Logan trying to get his own space without me? Predictable. Logan failing because he underestimated my impact. Delicious. The great thing about betrayal is that it turns cheaters into amateur jugglers, but they always drop the ball marked consequences. Around noon, I went downstairs to pick up a package and found a different kind of surprise. Someone had keyed my car. Not a deep scratch, not a random swipe, 3 deliberate lines on the driver's side door, like an angry toddler's attempt at art. I stared at it calmly. There was no emotional storm, no panic, no dramatic breakdown. Just a simple thought, he's getting sloppy. So I turned, walked back upstairs, sat at my desk, and began my next step. I wasn't going to call the police, not because it wasn't reportable, but because I didn't want to divert energy into something that wouldn't actually shift the balance. Instead, I wrote an email to the HOA security records, politely requesting footage from the parking lot cameras between 9 p.m. and midnight the night before, citing possible vandalism incident. Logan loved to throw words like legal at me. I preferred the phrase documented and timestamped. And if it wasn't him? Fine. I'd have footage anyway. Either way, it moved the game forward. Revenge doesn't require screaming. It requires structure. Later that afternoon, I ran into Tessa at the grocery store. Of all places, the produce aisle. She was standing there holding a bag of oranges, as if life had personally betrayed citrus. She saw me before I saw her. Her face went pale, in that way people get when they realize the person who knows the truth also has self-control. She tried to walk away, but I stepped in front of her cart. I wasn't blocking her, just making it inconvenient for her to slip away, like an escape room amateur. "Hi, Tessa," I said, voice calm, polite, almost friendly. She cleared her throat. "Jenna, I didn't expect to—" "You wore my robe," I said. "That's a bold starting move." Her mouth opened, then closed again. "I didn't know he was still married," I finished. "Living with me, using my mug, wearing my robe, eating my food. Which part helped you realize?" She swallowed. Her hands trembled slightly against the shopping cart handle. "He told me you were separated." "And you believed him?" She hesitated. That meant yes. People rarely confess outright. Their silence fills in the answers. I leaned in slightly, not physically threatening, just close enough for truth to sound clear. "Tessa, let me help you. If a man says he's sorting things out, but still has a wife paying the rent, furnishing the place, and monogramming the robes, he's not sorting anything. He's upgrading." Her jaw tightened. Not anger, embarrassment, a much sharper sensation. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. "You did," I said, "but one thing I learned already. You can't stop people from hurting you. You can only choose how to answer." Then I smiled, just enough to let her wonder whether I meant kindness or warning. "Enjoy the oranges," I said, and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Shame has gravity. When I got home, the email from Bank HR was waiting. Subject: Policy Violation Review Update. Message: Thank you for your cooperation. Your information has been verified and the case has moved to disciplinary stage. Further updates will not be shared due to confidentiality policy, but we appreciate your assistance. Translation: Tessa was either on probation, suspended, or officially marked as liability on her file, none of which were my responsibility. I didn't build the rules, I just lit them up like a runway strip. I closed my laptop and stretched. Revenge is strangely aerobic when it requires no shouting. That evening, I treated myself to takeout, sat on the couch, and watched an entirely unserious home makeover show. Halfway through, my phone dinged. Unknown number. "You think this is funny? You ruined her job." I didn't reply. I knew exactly who it was. I could feel the tantrum through the screen. 10 minutes later, "You went too far." Then, "Answer me." Then, "You're not this person." I stared at that last one, and something inside me shifted, not into anger but clarity. I typed back, "You're right, I wasn't. Sent." Then I blocked the number. He wanted access to me, even without the key. He wanted me angry, emotional, tangled. I wasn't giving him that. Not anymore. Let him yell into the void. I preferred conversation with people who could actually hear themselves think. The next morning, I got an email from an agency I freelanced for sometimes. One of the senior partners had heard through mutual channels that I was taking new clients. I wasn't technically, but revenge had a way of clearing schedule space. Money was no longer shared, so it was time to build something fully mine. I answered yes. Then I sat back and let the thought settle. The destruction he caused had accidentally carved out room for expansion. He thought locking me in chaos would leave me small. He forgot I design spaces for a living. I can rebuild anything, especially myself. That weekend, I took a walk through the neighborhood. No headphones, just listening. Sprinklers ticking, kids biking, someone grilling, someone mowing. The normal rhythm of a place that didn't know it was inside a story. A few neighbors waved. One hugged me, one whispered, "Good for you," under her breath like we were sharing state secrets. It was strange, realizing people weren't recoiling from my situation. They were rooting for my reaction. When I turned the corner toward my building, I saw something that stopped me in my tracks. Not in a dramatic sense, just in an, expected this way. My mailbox had been dented. Someone had kicked it in. Anger, not artistry. Same childish energy as the car scratch. I didn't sigh. I didn't get emotional. I just took out my phone, photographed it, and forwarded it to HOA security with a calm note. Vandalism seems to be escalating. Please add to record. Revenge isn't chaos. Revenge is paperwork and patience. After sending the report, I stood still for a long moment and let the quiet settle. This wasn't just about Logan anymore. This was about power. Who had it? Who pretended to? Who learned to claim it without throwing a tantrum in the parking lot? And I knew something with absolute certainty. The next phase wasn't going to be louder. It was going to be smarter. Because the thing about cheaters, they always think the worst thing you can do to them is yell, cry, or beg. They never expect you to stand still, stare them in the face, and say, "I'm not trying to win you back. I'm trying to bury the version of me that ever tolerated you." I walked upstairs, unlocked the door to my peaceful, quiet, freshly reclaimed life, and let myself enjoy the stillness. Chaos was theirs now. Control was mine. And that was the most satisfying renovation of all. I've always believed every space has a personality, and mine was going through a rebirth. Not a makeover. Those are for people who think a new throw pillow can fix emotional erosion. No, I was doing an overhaul. The kind where you strip everything down to the studs and rebuild with intention. I started with the bedroom. The bed Logan and I once shared. Gone. I sold it on Marketplace to a college couple who paid in cash and told me they were so in love. I didn't flinch. I wished them luck. Young hearts need it more than memory foam. The closet got rearranged too, not just for space, symbolism. His side became empty, then filled with neatly stacked fabric samples and sketchbooks. I wasn't reclaiming space. I was repurposing it. Interior design teaches you that every room tells a story. Mine used to say we. Now it said me, in a tone that didn't apologize for existing. There was a quiet satisfaction in it, peaceful but sharp-edged. Like a room with clean lines and hidden storage, everything functional and intentional. I didn't need chaos to feel alive anymore. I needed precision. It's funny, Logan always said I was too detail-oriented. That was one of his subtle digs, the kind that sounds like a compliment dressed in neutral tones. But my details were saving me. Organizing wasn't a coping mechanism. It was strategy disguised as housework. While I painted the accent wall, I thought about him trying to borrow money from acquaintances who used to admire him. I pictured him in some unfamiliar living room, couch cushion too thin, trying to pretend nothing was wrong. That was the thing about people like Logan. They only know how to operate when other people believe in them. Once that faith cracks, their whole performance turns sloppy. And speaking of sloppy, Tessa. I didn't plan to follow her. It just happened. I was driving home from a supplier meeting when I spotted her little silver sedan pulling out of the bank parking lot. Her posture behind the wheel was jittery, in a way it hadn't been before. Her jaw set, shoulders tense, like someone who suddenly understood she didn't have a safety net. I didn't accelerate. I just stayed behind her, 2 cars back, calm, quiet. I didn't need to intimidate her with speed. Subtle pressure always works better. She kept checking her mirror, and that alone told me everything I needed. She wasn't just guilty, she was scared. The difference matters. She drove through town, stopped at a pharmacy, then a gas station. I stayed back every time. I wasn't chasing. I was observing. There's a difference between confrontation and presence. Presence unsettles longer. Finally, she parked outside a small 1-story rental house, the kind with peeling trim and a yard full of weeds pretending to be grass. I didn't get out of my car. I just watched her walk inside, shoulders hunched like she was folding in on herself. Then I pulled to the curb, reached into my glove compartment and took out the neon sticky notes I keep for labeling project trays. I wrote in neat block letters, "Nice robe. Miss it yet?" I got out, stuck the note on her windshield, and walked away without looking back. Not because I didn't care about her reaction, but because power is never in the stare. It's in the exit. When I got home, I found an email waiting from one of Logan's former clients, a woman whose kitchen redesign I had once consulted on. She wrote, "Hi Jenna, heard about everything. Just wanted you to know. I'll be moving my mortgage refi to another broker. Not comfortable supporting someone who treats people like furniture." I didn't reply for a few minutes, not because I needed time to think, but because I wanted to savor it. That was the thing no one tells you about betrayal. Once the lies stop, the truth doesn't just free you, it recruits people. Logan built his image on likability. Once that cracks, his talent means nothing. People don't trust brokers, they trust narratives, and his was collapsing. I forwarded the email to myself with the subject line, "Collateral Beauty." That night, I made pasta, poured a glass of wine, and ate on the balcony. No sadness, no ache, just cool air and the sound of sprinklers turning lawns into green illusions. Somewhere, a neighbor's dog barked. Somewhere else, someone probably mentioned my name in a sentence with the word wow. Good. Let them talk. Let them guess. The more they speculated, the less I had to explain. The next phase came faster than I expected. Friday afternoon, I got a knock at the door. Not the frantic pounding Logan always favored, but a firm, hesitant rhythm. I opened it to find a woman around 30, brunette, jeans and scrubs, carrying a tote bag that said, "Nurses don't fix everything, but we try." "I'm Lila," she said. "Jenna, right? I'm here about the room." Right. The room. The sublet listing I posted 2 days earlier, on a quiet whim, thinking it might take weeks to find someone decent. But there she was, soft-spoken, polite, someone who radiated calm instead of chaos. I liked her instantly. I gave her the tour, explained the rent, utilities, the no Logan, no drama rule. She laughed at that, not confused, understanding. We walked into the spare room, the one that used to be an office until it became the site of marital erosion. I had already cleared it out. People think healing is emotional. They forget it's also manual labor. "I love it," she said, hands clasped, genuine awe in her face. "It feels safe." Safe. That wasn't a word I'd associated with my home in a long time. I nodded once. "You can move in next week," I said, "if you're sure." "Oh, I'm sure. I just got out of a long-term situation with someone who had trouble being loyal. So this feels like a reset button." We shook hands. Something about it felt like the universe resetting too. Later that evening, I got a message from Logan. The tone was wrong instantly, not angry, not desperate. Worse, measured. "We need to talk, in person. No yelling, no chaos, just a conversation." If he had sent that 2 months earlier, I might have believed he meant it. But now I could practically smell the manipulation under the punctuation. I didn't reply immediately. I let him sit in message purgatory for an hour. Then I texted, "About what?" He responded almost instantly, "I think it's time we end this in a way that doesn't ruin both of us." Translation: Things are not going well for me, so now I want to negotiate peace. I said, "No need for drama. Talk is fine. Neutral location, public place, name it." He tried to push for the apartment. I refused. He tried to schedule sooner than I wanted. I pushed it back 2 days. Small things, but they matter. People like Logan don't understand boundaries. They understand outcomes. Delays confuse them. Calm responses unsettle them. Silence terrifies them. Before I went to bed, I stood in the hallway looking at the freshly painted accent wall. I thought about how many times he told me I was too intense, too particular, too much. All lies. I wasn't too much. I was just too observant for his comfort. That's the real reason cheaters hate being caught. It's not the guilt, it's the exposure. They don't like realizing the person they thought was soft was actually silent, studying, and 6 steps ahead. I slept well. The next morning, while I was making coffee, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. "Hello?" A voice I hadn't expected. Tessa. Her tone was tight, thin, a stretched rubber band on the verge of snapping. "You got me suspended," she said. Not emotional, flat. "No," I said. "You got yourself suspended. I just sent visual aids. You don't understand. I could lose everything." "You wore my robe." Silence. Then, quietly, "Do you enjoy this?" "What, accountability?" I asked. "Very much." She exhaled shakily. "He told me you were controlling, that you made his life miserable." I almost laughed. Not loud, not mocking, just disbelief turned soft. "Tessa," I said, "if I controlled anything, do you think he'd have been in your bed in the first place?" Another silence. Different this time. Realization starting to form, slow and awful. "I didn't know," she whispered. "You did," I corrected. "You just ignored the parts that made you uncomfortable." She didn't argue. That was the closest thing to honesty I'd ever heard from her. When she hung up, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel pity either. I just felt done. Like I had walked out of a store without buying anything and didn't owe anyone an explanation. That afternoon, I met Mia at a cafe, same one where rumors ripened like bruised fruit. She was already waiting, sunglasses on, iced latte in hand. "You look incredible," she said as soon as I sat down, "like a woman who's ruined at least one man's fiscal quarter." "Working on 2, actually." She laughed so loud, heads turned. "You know," she said, leaning in, "the best part of all this, you didn't even raise your voice." "That's the secret," I said. "Whispers travel faster." She nodded like I had just handed her a sacred scroll. Then she checked her phone, looked up, and said, "You're aware Logan's trying to get his reputation back, right? He's been calling people, trying to get ahead of the story." "I know," I said. "Let him. Redemption arcs require an audience. Mine's booked." She grinned, wide and wicked. "So what's next?" I stirred my drink slowly, let the ice clink in the glass. "Next," I said, "he learns that silence isn't forgiveness, it's strategy." When I got home, I found a letter under my door. No envelope. Handwritten, Logan's handwriting. I scanned it, not because I cared about the sentiment, but because I wanted to see how he was framing the narrative now. It was full of classic lines. "We were good once. I didn't mean for it to get this out of hand. You're smarter than this coldness. Let's end this before it gets worse for both of us." That last line made me laugh. Worse for both of us. He still thought we were in the same story. He still thought the ending was mutual. He still thought the worst thing I could do was drag this out. Oh, Logan, the worst thing I could do already happened. I stopped loving him. Everything after that was just cleanup. I ripped the note in half, not out of anger, just habit. Then I threw it away and opened my calendar. 2 days until the meeting. I didn't know what he wanted yet, but I knew what I wanted. For him to understand, completely and without confusion, that the person he walked away from no longer existed. The woman he'd meet next, she rebuilt herself, with better lighting, and no room for him in the floor plan. I closed my laptop, exhaled, and whispered to myself, the blueprint is working. And phase 3 was about to begin. The weekend had a kind of quiet power to it, the way sunlight slants just right through maple leaves on a suburban street, revealing patterns you didn't notice during the week. I used that quiet. I walked the neighborhood in sneakers and a windbreaker, letting the air sharpen my thoughts. Logan had made a series of mistakes that week, the cumulative weight of which I could now watch unfold like dominoes. Every client he lost, every inquiry that came to me instead, every neighbor who whispered about his improprieties, I catalogued them mentally, all the while pretending that my walk was about exercise and not surveillance. From a distance, I noticed Tessa's car parked awkwardly in the corner of the grocery lot. Her posture behind the wheel was defensive, curved inward, eyes darting. She hadn't expected me. I slowed down, keeping a discreet distance, keeping my engine running so I could leave in a heartbeat. The principle was the same as last week. Presence is pressure. I didn't honk. I didn't shout. I didn't even make my car light flash. I just followed. She stopped at a pharmacy and lingered there, a bag of oranges and some other groceries in her hands. She glanced around, probably half expecting me to be gone. But I stayed, turning the corner slowly enough that she couldn't see me. I pulled out a sticky note from my glove compartment and scribbled a message. Remember the robe. Nothing more. I placed it carefully on her windshield, knowing she'd see it when she returned. Then I drove home, calmly, like a woman walking away from a canvas she had just painted. Back in the apartment, I poured a glass of wine and sat on the balcony, listening to the neighborhood chatter, the sprinklers, the distant dog barks, someone mowing a lawn. Life went on, oblivious, which is exactly the way it should be. Meanwhile, Tessa's world was quietly destabilizing. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to threaten. Subtlety is more painful than shouting. Later, I checked my emails. A client I had casually mentioned to a friend about Logan's unreliability had forwarded my contact information to a colleague. A small ripple in the pond, but a ripple is all it takes to turn the tide. Logan was starting to feel the consequences of his choices, the social and professional isolation he had long underestimated. This neighborhood, this social network, worked the way gossip networks always did. Information flowed to the right people, and reputations either stabilized or sank. Logan's was tilting dangerously. In the afternoon, I got a message from Logan. Short, direct, lacking any of his usual smarm. We need to meet. Public. Neutral. I read it twice. The calm, deliberate tone was dangerous. Not desperate, not angry, but controlled. He was trying to manipulate, to assert that this was about diplomacy when I already knew it was about damage control. I didn't reply immediately. I wanted him to sit in the pause, the uncertainty. Instead, I prepared. My apartment had become my headquarters. I went through old project notes, financial records, and client lists, things that reminded me that I wasn't just a passive participant in his schemes. Every successful design I had completed, every referral I had nurtured, every network I had maintained was a testament to my independence. I wasn't just reclaiming space, I was consolidating power. By evening, Tessa had called. Her voice was tight, nervous, unsteady. "You're enjoying this," she said flatly. "I'm enjoying what's fair," I said. "You didn't read the lease. You didn't think the consequences through. I'm just documenting them." She was quiet. I didn't interrupt. Silence works differently when guilt is heavy. It presses, like a cornered animal realizing it has nowhere to hide. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered. You meant every step of it, I replied evenly. You just ignored the warning signs. And that was all. She hung up. I didn't feel relief or triumph. I felt clarity. Tessa was no longer a complication. She was a solved variable in a larger equation, one I was now fully controlling. That night, I went over the apartment again, room by room. I checked the kitchen, the living room, the workspace, and the guest room. Everything was arranged in a way that reinforced my autonomy. I had even placed subtle reminders of my life before Logan, the pieces of me he had overlooked. Photographs, sketches, small mementos of my career achievements. It wasn't revenge, it was assertion. This was my life, my rules, my narrative. On Sunday, I met Lila, the new roommate, for coffee. She was steady, reliable, with the sort of calm that doesn't need justification. We talked about her move-in schedule, the responsibilities, the rent, and the house rules. I watched her reaction carefully. She nodded, understood, absorbed everything I said without question. She was already aligned with the new order of things, and I realized just how much power comes from surrounding yourself with people who get it, who get you. Returning home, I opened the email from the bank's HR department. The message was brief and professional. The complaint against Tessa was under review, and further details would not be shared. I smiled at the economy of language. Policies and procedures have a weight that personal feelings cannot touch. Tessa's suspension, pending or otherwise, was no longer in my hands. She had triggered it herself. Logan, however, was a different matter. The week had brought him small defeats, but he was still trying to assert control in the ways that mattered to him. Messaging, showing up, trying to manipulate, all under the guise of civility. I let him play that role. It entertained me. The following morning, I received a call from Logan, the kind of call that required careful navigation. "Jenna," he said, calm, collected, "we need to talk. Just talk. No yelling, no accusations. A conversation." I measured my response carefully. "Where?" "Neutral location," he said immediately. "Cafe or something. Private enough to discuss, public enough to stay polite." I paused. "Tomorrow, 11 a.m., I said. He agreed, and just like that, the terms were set. I wasn't giving him power by agreeing to meet. I was giving him a stage where I would control the narrative entirely. While preparing for the meeting, I took a walk around the block. I wanted to see the neighborhood awake in daylight, observe the subtle patterns, the quiet cues that told me which homes were active, which were empty, which neighbors were likely to gossip. The exercise was both mental and strategic. Observation is a tool as valuable as a hammer. I spotted two neighbors speaking near their mailbox, whispering. Their heads turned toward me as I passed. I nodded politely, maintaining the calm, unflappable exterior I had been cultivating. Let them speculate. Let them wonder. Curiosity is leverage. Returning to my apartment, I began laying out the plans for the next phase, Phase 3. It involved restructuring the social and professional environment that Logan had taken for granted. Clients would learn about reliability and trust, neighbors would witness boundaries, and Tessa would feel the weight of missteps without me raising my voice. I reviewed the finances as well. Careful calculations showed that Logan had been counting on certain joint accounts to stabilize his lifestyle. No more. I adjusted automatic payments, sublet the spare room to Lila, and ensured that everything now funneled through accounts I fully controlled. Small moves, legal, clean, undeniable. By the time evening came, I had a sense of calm I hadn't felt in months. I poured a glass of wine, settled on the balcony, and watched the sunset paint the neighborhood in soft oranges and golds. Each house had a story, and in mine, I was finally writing it myself. Then my phone buzzed, an unknown number. "Jenna," Logan's voice said, even, deliberate, controlled. "Tomorrow at 11. I hope you're ready. I want to settle this once and for all." I didn't respond immediately. I looked out over the street. The sprinklers hissed. The mailboxes gleamed in the last rays of sun. Somewhere, a child laughed. A dog barked. A leaf drifted lazily across the pavement. I smiled. I was ready. The calm before confrontation is a different kind of power. It allows you to see clearly, to act deliberately, and to anticipate the moves of those who think they still hold influence. Phase 3, the final reckoning, was imminent, and I knew, with an unwavering certainty, that when tomorrow came, everything Logan thought he could control would be gone. For the first time in months, I felt untouchable, not because I had power over others, but because I had power over myself. The blueprint was complete, the structures were in place, the players were positioned, and Logan had no idea the storm that awaited him. Tomorrow would not be conversation, it would be realization, and I would be the one handing out the clarity. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the anticipation settle, letting the patience harden into resolve. I wasn't fearful, I wasn't anxious, I was ready. The next morning, 11 a.m., neutral location. The final act was about to begin. The morning air had a sharpness that reminded me how vivid the world could be when you were focused. The kind of day where shadows cut clean lines on sidewalks and everything seems crisp, deliberate, intentional. I arrived at the cafe early, 15 minutes before the meeting Logan had requested. Neutral location, public enough to avoid chaos, private enough to maintain control. I chose a corner table with a clear view of the entrance, a layout that let me see every person approaching while remaining unobtrusive. I sipped my coffee slowly, paying attention to the people around me, the barista moving methodically behind the counter, the elderly couple at the window booth discussing groceries, a man in a tailored suit typing furiously on his laptop. Normal life. Mundane, predictable, and utterly mine to observe. Observation was power, and I wielded it with calm precision. Logan arrived 5 minutes late, as expected. He looked composed, intentionally so, though his posture betrayed a slight tension around the shoulders. The practiced smile didn't reach his eyes. I had seen it before. He thought it would shield him from consequence, but it only made him more readable. He approached, nodding stiffly, then slid into the chair opposite mine. "Morning," he said. Controlled, polite, the kind of greeting designed to disarm. "Morning," I replied, voice even. "I hope the coffee is strong enough for both of us." He smiled faintly, probably mistaking my calm tone for weakness. "I thought we could talk," he said. "Sort this out, make it easier on both sides." I leaned back, letting him fill the silence with his practiced phrases. I didn't interrupt. Silence is its own conversation when wielded deliberately. "I know things got out of hand," he continued. "I didn't mean for it to spiral like this." "Spiral," I repeated softly, almost tasting the word. "Interesting choice. You mean the series of choices you made that affected multiple lives, including your own?" He faltered slightly, just enough for me to see the undercurrent of unease. I kept my expression neutral, letting the weight of his missteps hang in the space between us. "I just want to talk," he said again. "Figure out how we can—" "No," I said, cutting him off cleanly. "Talk is done. This isn't about dialogue. This is about consequence. Do you understand the difference?" His lips pressed together. A subtle indication he did. I continued. "Every move you made had repercussions. Every lie, every omission, every casual betrayal has landed squarely on you. And I didn't make it happen. You did." He opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. I could see the calculations behind his eyes, the attempts to script a response that would preserve whatever dignity he believed he still had. But I had removed that safety net. "I've reviewed everything," I said. "Your accounts, your contacts, your social network, every gap in judgment, every misstep. It's documented, and it's tangible. You can't argue with that." He shifted in his seat, looking around the cafe as if hoping for someone else to intervene. No one did. Everyone was absorbed in their own lives. That was the point. The public world doesn't rescue the reckless. "You think this is over?" he asked finally, quieter, almost a whisper. "Yes," I replied. "It's over. For me. But for you, this is realization. This is understanding. And it's happening exactly as it should." I watched as comprehension settled on his face. Not anger, not rage, something more insidious. Recognition. He had misjudged me, misjudged my patience, my intelligence, my willingness to act. He had assumed that my silence was weakness. It wasn't. It was strategy. I didn't expect this," he said, voice tight, struggling to mask the vulnerability he hadn't shown me in months. "Expect what?" I asked, calm. "This," he said, gesturing vaguely. "All of this. The control, the precision, the clarity." I let the word linger. Clarity. That's exactly what I wanted him to feel. "I didn't create this," I said. "You did. Every careless word, every assumption, every hidden move. You built this outcome. I simply documented it and reinforced the structure." He ran a hand through his hair, a subtle tic he always had when he felt exposed. I noticed. Observation is power. Awareness is leverage. Then I reached into my tote and pulled out the printed photos of Tessa in my robe, taken the day I walked in on her. I laid them on the table slowly, deliberately, letting him see the evidence without commentary. His eyes flicked to each one, the realization dawning with every glance. "You sent these," he began. "I forwarded them to her HR," I said simply. "She's already facing consequences for her choices. I didn't create this. I highlighted it, just like I've highlighted yours." He leaned back, shoulders tightening. I didn't need to speak. The room was silent enough to carry the tension, the weight of accountability pressing without a word. You're not the same person," he said eventually. "I am," I replied. "I just removed the part that tolerated you, the part that forgave without cause. That version of me no longer exists, and it doesn't come back." He looked at me, really looked, and I saw the panic begin to edge into his composure. Not loud, not obvious, but there. His world of assumptions was unraveling, and he had no idea how to respond. "You've ruined everything," he said finally, the words coming out sharper than intended. "Everything you created through your own recklessness," I corrected. "I just facilitated understanding. You mismanaged trust, responsibility, and discretion. That's not my doing." He swallowed, silent for a moment, then muttered, "I never realized." "Exactly," I said. "That's the point. Understanding is the last thing you achieve when you're forced to face the outcomes you ignored. You never realized what your choices would cost you, and now you are realizing it all at once." I reached into my bag again, pulling out the lease agreement, highlighted sections, and financial records. I laid them on the table beside the photos, clear and organized. Every move, every transaction, every contractual detail. The evidence was factual, undeniable. He couldn't argue with it. "I locked you out because I own the space legally," I said. "I restructured the household. I repurposed the environment. Your place is no longer yours. You can argue, protest, or demand, but it doesn't change the facts. I did not make this happen. You did. You set the conditions." His jaw tightened. He was quiet now, calculating, attempting mental maneuvers. But there were no maneuvers left. He had exhausted them by assuming I would behave emotionally, reactively, passively. He never accounted for strategy tempered with restraint. I sat back, fingers laced around my coffee cup, and watched him process. The clarity of his comprehension was almost satisfying. Almost. I didn't need it to be a show. He only needed to face the reality he had constructed with his own choices. "You've changed," he said finally, quieter. I didn't understand." "You understood nothing until this moment," I said. "Now you have context, consequences, responsibility, and the truth that your actions are yours alone to own. He exhaled slowly, visibly gathering himself, trying to craft a response that would minimize his exposure. I didn't flinch. I didn't encourage him. I simply let him sit in the truth, exposed and accountable. Then I leaned forward slightly, voice even, deliberate. Everything you relied on, the trust, the assumption of forgiveness, the leverage you thought you had, is gone. You have no access to what I control now. You have only your own reckoning. He glanced at the receipts, the emails, the lease, the photos, all neatly stacked and organized. The realization hit him, subtle but undeniable. The network of misjudgments he thought he could navigate had collapsed. He had no stage, no audience, no safety net. He was exactly where he had positioned himself, exposed, accountable, and contained by his own prior choices. I sipped my coffee, letting the taste anchor me. Control is maintained through observation, preparation, and patience. I had used every tool available. Every step was logical, legal, undeniable. No theatrics, no sensationalism, just cause and effect executed with precision. He looked at me one last time, eyes narrowing slightly, searching for some opening, some weakness, some escape. There wasn't one. There couldn't be one. The meeting was over. The lesson complete. "You've won," he said finally, quiet, almost defeated. "I didn't win," I corrected. "I acted. You lost. You built the framework for this outcome, and I merely followed the map you created. That's not winning. It's reality." He nodded slowly, shoulders sagging, realizing the truth of it. He couldn't manipulate it away, charm it into oblivion, or fabricate it into something it wasn't. The consequences were fixed, immutable, logical. I gathered my things, stood, and slid the chair back. The cafe was still normal. The barista called out a name, someone laughed. The world continued around us, indifferent. Logan remained seated for a moment, looking at the papers, the photos, the lease. Then he exhaled and stood as well. He didn't argue. He didn't attempt to negotiate. He simply followed the trajectory that his actions had set for him. I walked toward the exit first, maintaining a calm, steady pace. He followed, silent, aware that the meeting had concluded not with anger, not with drama, but with undeniable logic. Outside, the sunlight struck the pavement cleanly, highlighting every detail, every crack, every imperfection. I let the brightness wash over me. This was clarity. This was control. This was the end of what needed ending. I turned briefly to glance at him. He met my eyes for a fraction of a second, long enough to see comprehension, regret, and resignation flash across his face. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. He understood. As I walked away, the wind brushed my hair back from my face, the air crisp and affirming. The neighborhood, oblivious, continued around me. Children played, sprinklers hissed, neighbors mowed lawns. Normal life pressed on. I had reclaimed mine. And in that reclamation, I understood something fundamental. Power isn't loud. It isn't chaotic. It isn't revenge in the form of theatrics. Power is precise. It is deliberate. It is logical. It is unyielding. And today, I wielded it fully. I stepped onto the sidewalk, moving toward my apartment, toward my life. Every step was measured, confident, deliberate. The storm had passed. The aftermath was clean. And I had emerged unchanged in essence, transformed in circumstance, and unassailable in consequence. The final act had played out. Logan had confronted reality. Tessa had confronted reality. And I had controlled the narrative from beginning to end. For the first time in months, the apartment awaited me, mine completely. The doors opened, I stepped inside, and everything was finally, irrevocably, under my command.